All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fort Wayne Local Podcast. Today, our special guest is Jacinda Newsell. Jacinda, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to talk about Airbnb. It's something that I have experience with. It's something that you do professionally. I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I think there's also a lot of caution that should be taken before people jump in. So before we get started, let's do a little bit about your background. So where'd you grow up?
Grew up in a small town, North Dakota, and I loved growing up there. I grew up on a farm, technically. Like, you had to get your binoculars out to like see your neighbors, kind of thing. The running joke in North Dakota is that you can watch your dog run away for 3 days because there's no trees, there's no hills, there's no nothing. So it was an easy transition to Indiana when I eventually moved there. That there was just more trees. Same thing, same kind of people, but just more trees.
Yeah. So was this like the big city for you?
It was, yeah. I had big dreams of like moving. Like, I thought about moving to St. Louis or Chicago or Minneapolis. Minneapolis was still too cold, and all the other cities were just like super overwhelming. Like, I really liked that Fort Wayne was still digestible, I guess, for me. Like, there was so much more opportunity, like 14,000 people to 250,000. Like, it was a jump. It was still, I mean, 10 minutes out of, well, maybe 15 to 20 now, but 20 minutes out of downtown, you can still find cornfields. So it's like, oh, these are my people. Okay.
All right. And then, so now you are managing Airbnbs for a living. You have an actual Airbnb management business. Is that correct?
Co-hosting. Yeah. We have to be a fine line, but yeah, co-hosting.
Co-hosting. All right. Look at me. I'm learning already. See, this is what I was going for. We're co-hosting. Okay. And so how many listings do you currently co-host?
Today we have 48, and that's climbed and declined and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I had to let 10 listings go this last January, February time. That just, they weren't winners anymore.
I get it. Okay. And then how long have you been doing this?
I started doing it casually in like 2018, and then I started doing it full time in 2021. Yeah. 2021. Yep. Quit my day job.
You got a couple years in. So do you have a team then, or is it just you, or how do you work that?
We do. Yeah. Yeah. So I have learned, I used to have a go-to right-hand woman that was just everything to me. And then, like, she had her own life, so she had to move away and stuff like that. And then I was like, what do I do? And so I have learned to build teams in every single city that we have properties in. So, like, maintenance, cleaners, and then what I call runners, and then building out like an actual online, wherever in the world we are, kind of team. So right now on that side, it's just me. I've blown through some VAs, and I'm learning that I need to work on my leadership skills. I'm good at all the physical stuff of like building an Airbnb, furnishing it, staging it, like doing all the things. I'm really good at that. I need to build my, like, how do I set up a system for someone to succeed with them without having to ask me for every little small question and stuff like that.
Yeah. Spoken like a true entrepreneur. Okay. And then what states are you in?
We are in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then we have one in Michigan. We did have a few out here for the Super Bowl, but obviously after Super Bowl, then those people want to live in their houses again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And you're in Phoenix right now. I don't think we covered that. You live in Phoenix.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. I love Phoenix. Okay. And then, so how did you get started in Airbnb? Like, what piqued your interest?
Yeah, it did not pique my interest. I couldn't afford rent one month. I was renting a townhouse, and I was like, I started traveling when I was freshly 18. I traveled abroad, and I fell in love with traveling like that. I traveled for 3 months, and I got to like see the world, not as a tourist necessarily. Like, I really got a feel for the country and their lifestyle and stuff. And I wanted to be able to do that, but I knew that, like, as soon as I go back, I'm going to get a day job and like have to work another 47 years before I can retire and take 3 months off like that again. And so then I was like, well, what if I get like a work remote job? This was before COVID, so that was like a little bit less popular. And so I was studying part-time and working part-time towards that certification so that I could do that remotely. And I was like still blowing through expenses at a full-time rate. And so I was like, what am I going to do for rent next month? I don't know, all the things. And so someone whispered in my ear, like, oh, you should try Airbnb. Do your extra room out there on Airbnb. And I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not having strangers come live with me in my own house. Like, that's a weird. It is actually a violation of your lease agreement. You're really not supposed to do that. But man, I need the money. So sometimes we try things outside the box when we're desperate. So I gave it a shot. Luckily, I lived in an apartment complex that I think they were just happy that they made their rent money every month from me. I'm not sure if they ever found out. Would not recommend it. You seriously can get an evicted for it, and it's just not good. But this time around, I didn't really know much better. And so, yeah, I started renting out like a few times, and then it was like kind of picking up. So I at least could make rent that month. And then pretty soon it was like covering all my rent. And I was like, this is kind of working out. And so then I got on my feet and I was able to purchase a fixer-upper. So I bought a 4-bed, 1.5-bath house. And then I started renting out all the extra rooms as I would renovate the house and stuff like that. But by the time I had finished like the shared spaces and furnished one room, it was prime COVID time. And I was like, well, that was a great idea. Like, what am I going to do now? Because no one's going to be traveling. But then we started getting all these travel nurses to the area, and it was really quite an answered prayer. So I really would sincerely be friends with every single person that came and lived with me in my house and stuff, except for one. He was like, just kidding. But I really enjoyed that it was income, like that I could, like, it's still my house. I still make the rules. Hey, this is my parking spot. Hey, you need to have your dishes done within 24 hours or whatever. And, you know, there's a good income with it. But also, like, it's not like I have to flip the room every single day, because that was becoming problematic as I would go to work. And then I'd have to, like, hurry home on my lunch hour to, like, flip the room so that a new person can come in at 4 because I'm not off by that time. And it was just a little bit too much for the daily turnover. So I really appreciated this sweet spot of the midterm rentals that now a lot of people are really falling in love with. And I'm like, yeah, like, this is the great part. Like, it was so manageable. For me to do. I didn't start getting help until much later on. And so it was so manageable for these midterm rentals to quite a capacity before I really need help. Because it's not like we have daily turnovers. We have a turnover every like 13 weeks, every 6 months or something like that.
Okay. And then how did you take it from just your own property, covering your own rent, to like, how did you shift into this is going to be a business for me?
Yeah. I was on the phone with Dakota Bailey with LTD Property Group.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, so how much are those rooms rent? How are you doing with those property, like the rooms in my property? And I was like adding it up, and it was, I think my day job, I made $2,000 a month, and my rooms that I was renting out total up to $2,400 a month. And I was like, wait a second, like that, I've replaced my like day job technically. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'll just stick it out. You know, I'll get to make hella money during this time. This will be great. Save up for maybe a new down payment for a new house or something like that. I really hadn't expanded my mind into much like creative financing or anything like that. Like the thought of asking for a personal money loan was like way out of my comfort zone and stuff like that. But one day, yeah, my boss pissed me off, and I was like complaining to my coworker, and she's like, "You don't even need this," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't even need it." And so I quit my job, but then I soon panicked because I was like, "How am I gonna find a house now?" Because I was getting so many inquiries from all these nurses that I had more inquiries than I had rooms available for them, which I was like, that's a great, I at least understand the law of supply and demand. And so like, I need to have more supply for all this demand. And so then I did for everything else in my life, it seems like. And you go on YouTube and you find out what other people like you are doing. And so that's when I got introduced to rental arbitrage or subleasing. And so that was my like golden ticket of like, oh, this is how I can scale. And so then I decided to double down on getting more properties for me through that avenue. And I gave the worst pitch of my life to Ed Arevalo with AG Rentals. And he took a chance on me with some student rental properties and stuff like that. So I had 2 properties that each had 5 rooms in them. So I got to like increase my portfolio by 10 more listings because I would rent them out by the room. And so quickly I was like scaling from 3 to 13 in the matter of a couple months. And so it was like drinking from a fire hydrant for sure.
All right. And for those who don't know, what's rental arbitrage and what's subleasing?
Yeah. So there is a landlord that has a house, has a property. He's looking for a long-term tenant. I tell him, hey, I want to rent your property as a long-term tenant. I'll even rent it for 2 to 3, 4, 5 years. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and furnish it, and then I'm going to sublease it out to other people. You're going to get your committed long-term rent amount every single month for as long as you want. I'm not going to bother you with things. I'm going to have it cleaned regularly. Like, I genuinely do believe that I'm their best option out of all these long-term tenants. Like, I'm going to be taking care of the maintenance for small issues. I'm going to be taking care of cleaning it routinely. It's not like someone's going to move in and not clean the shower for 2 years and leave it disgusting by the time you come and find it. And so then you get to make the profit. So when you're looking for these properties, you have to make sure that you're running your numbers properly. And this is where I learned a big lesson that came to hit me this year, was like making sure that the rent amount that I'm paying and the rent amount that I can actually collect, that was checking out. That was checking out really great when I was renting it out by the room. It was super wonderful. But making sure that those properties flex. So my main pitch was by the room rentals. I really need to make sure that that house made sense as like, okay, can we rent it as a whole house on Airbnb? Can we rent it out as a midterm as a whole house? Or like, can I just rent it as a long-term furnished property if we really need to like cut corners, like if we're hurting and stuff like that. And like the house just didn't make sense as anything but by the room rentals on Airbnb. And so then when that market kind of went away, then you're stuck with the bill and stuff like that. So just making sure that those properties make sense multiple ways, but it's a really great way to make money. So like those properties, I had like $2,400 in rent, but I made $5,000 a month off of it. So I was making as much as I was spending on it. So during those months, I was like, life is great.
That's awesome. Okay. And another important distinction, you kind of touched on this, but you were being upfront with the landlord when you rented the property, like, here is my intention for this property.
Yeah. Be very, very clear. But again, like there is a clause in any rental agreement that you're going to sign that is very clear that you're not allowed to sublease. So for us, like we just added a clause at the end that says it was an amendment to that. But to have that discussion with them, some of them, they're going to shut you out. I do have like a presentation on how to pitch to landlords and stuff like that, if some people want to find that on my Instagram. But like I gave the worst pitch of my entire life, and he just like gave me the time of day to explain it to him. He took a chance on me. Thankfully, we had built a relationship. So like if that's something that someone wants to get into, I would really highly recommend one. I guess property managers are a great like specific place to make those relationships, but like go to the RIA meetings, make relationships with all these other landlords and property owners so they at least know who you are, where they at least hear you out for your crazy idea. Because it does sound like a scam on paper. Like when you just look about it, it's like, oh, what is that? But actually a really great relationship.
Okay. I like that a lot. And that's, you touched on something else. So I owned an Airbnb. I think I was telling you, I think it was end of 2017, 2018, something like that, early 2018. Yeah. And I learned that the wear and tear on the property is actually very minimal because you are checking it between every guest. You are cleaning it, where, like you said, if you have a long-term tenant, I've been doing real estate a long time, and I've gone in and showed some properties where you get in there after a tenant's been in there for a couple of years, and it's like, it can be really rough, where the turnover is so high that, I didn't have a light bulb out, in my property. It was like, everything was clean. Everything was up to date. The bathrooms were spotless. So that's something important. If you're a landlord that's being approached, I think that's actually kind of a benefit, is that there's no one there long enough to ruin it. And for the most part, they're usually there for a reason. So they're not even home that much. They kind of just come there to like sleep and shower and go back to work or whatever event brought them into town.
Yeah. My Airbnbs are cleaner than my own house. Like they're cleaned so much more.
Okay. And then, so now that you're kind of up and running, what's something that you think you do well that maybe other co-hosts or owners are overlooking? It can be something small, but what's something you're like, this is something that we do well?
It's very basic, but my response rate is like, I really aim to reply to guests in 2 minutes or less. Now, it doesn't always happen all the time, but like I have trained my brain to wake up at 2 a.m. when I hear the Airbnb notification. Like I will wake up out of a dead sleep to either take a reservation or help a guest problem solve the lock, even though I have an essay description, I have a YouTube tutorial, I have everything. But like Airbnbs are not always going to go smoothly, but you can mitigate, like guests get hot really quick if something goes wrong. And so if I can, like having a problem, but the longer it takes to solve it really amplifies the situation. So if I can at least show them like, hey, I'm here with you, I'm actively trying to solve it and stuff like that, my response rate really helps mitigate their anger about the situation, whether or not it gets resolved, whether or not it ends up getting to be the perfect experience that they wanted. Just showing them that I'm responsive to them, I care about them, I hear what they're saying, and I'm working on it. Like it shows them that I'm on their side.
I think that's huge. That's something I talk about. So I have a real estate sales team here, and one of my big rules is like if you have an angry client, get like with us, get them on the phone. I know it's more text through your system, but I'm like, get them on the phone, because as much as people want their problem solved, they actually just want to know that you care.
Yes.
And you have to really care. I mean, you can't fake it, but like sometimes I feel like just letting a problem fester can make a teeny little problem way worse when if you had just contacted them immediately. There's a lot of times where people are like, it's actually don't even worry about it. But like once you heard them out and then they saw that you were trying to fix it, and then they calm way down because they don't. I think there's also that fear of like both with Airbnb and just in general is like, is this problem going to snowball into something that negatively affects me? So as soon as you contact them, that already just brings them down a notch where they're like, all right, at least this person's on this, and I can be a little more patient. Where the longer it takes you to respond, now they start blowing you up and you got a bunch of texts and a bunch of calls. And so I think that's a really, really good tip is like the responsiveness, especially when they have hotels as an option. You're competing with hotels. So it's like you almost have to go above and beyond to make sure that they know, hey, this is not a risky stay. This is someone who we know what we're doing. We can solve your problem. Like we're on it.
Yes. Yeah. I would really say that like, it's been a good refocus for me, realizing that Airbnb got started to be an alternative to hotels and stuff like that. So while the market got really saturated with hosts, like I know that, I mean, not gonna lie, back when I got started, and I'm sure in the same time frame that you had yours, like there wasn't that many. And so if you didn't have the right integrity, you could you could kind of press guests to being like, well, where else are you going to go? Especially if you have a big house, like they're not going to get a hotel. There's no healthy alternative for it. And so you could be a terrible host and still press people and get business and stuff like that. And so now like really trying to provide stuff above and beyond even hotels. So like, man, I used to have owners that are like, oh, we need to nickel and dime for all these little things. And like, no, we are not doing that. If you want to check in early, as long as I can allow that, go for it, bro. If you want to check out late, go for it. I want to like try and figure out a way to like make their anniversary special or things like that. Like I am not trying to make this a, you only paid an economy rate, so you're only getting economy service and stuff like that. Like Airbnbs are created to be better than hotels. So like, don't be a butt about it.
Yeah. Well, you're in the people business too. I think it's easy to look at dollars and cents. You're an investor, like you care about your bottom line, but really like people are your product. And so if you have to know that, and you have to take that for better, for worse, you know what I mean? Like we're in a instant gratification, like everything's at everyone's fingertips. And if you're not, then you have to accept what comes with that. And to your point, I told you off air, when I had my Airbnb, we got professional photos from like a professional real estate photographer. We were literally the only listing in the city of Fort Wayne with professional photos.
And I bet people are like giving crap for it too. Like,
wasteful. Everybody does wasteful. And so, but just being in real estate and sales, I'm like, I'm selling my place where like now, I've gone in just out of curiosity. I've gone in, there's way more options, and almost all of them not all of them, but a big percentage of them have really good photos, or even at least good iPhone photos, if nothing else. But they're staged and they're, where before it looked like they were just like, there's my house, like just taking a picture, where now
it's like even flip on the lights to take the photo kind of thing.
And so I feel like classic capitalism, like it's raised the bar for everyone, and then the guest benefits because their options are much better. So Okay. And then what's something you think you could still do better? Like what's, any business owner knows here's something that I'm trying to work on moving forward. What's something that you're trying to implement now to get better?
I would really like to do that personal touch and stuff like that. So like one time I had a guest, and I mean I did it because she was mad, so I was just trying to appease her. But I like to do that more often. Is that she ended up like getting the flu or something like that overnight while she was at the property. So she was sick, throwing up and stuff like that. And so I sent her like soup and 7 Up and stuff the next day. And those are the kind of things that I want to be able to do. Now it's a hard thing when you're a co-host, like, is that the owner's bill? Is that your bill? So like I've personally just realized like, okay, in order to provide a premium service, like maybe I just need to charge more me personally. And then that way I can make those calls as things come up. So like when we have guests that are here for their anniversaries, like we have a cool looking studio now that has like a jacuzzi and it's right by the ball field downtown and stuff like that. We're getting some more couples that want to come and stay there. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to like have a little, bottle of champagne or something like that. But some owners just don't quite see, like a lot of times the people that I work with for their properties, like they're really good at long-term rentals, which is just a different mindset when it comes to Airbnbs. Like you really have to focus on the people. Like you said, this is a hospitality business. And so maybe that's just coming out of my side of the business so I can continue to provide that kind of service. And then the owners will eventually see the benefit of it.
Yep, I did some of the same things. We had a couple do a staycation, and I sent them a nice bottle of champagne that was, if I remember correctly, the bottle was probably half what their stay was. But I was like, you know
Yeah.
what though? I just wanted to like knock their socks off. And if they
Yes.
ever do it again or they tell their friends, like I'm all about like making less money in the short term and trying to
Yes.
build like an army of people who are like, I want to do more with that guy.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like my business plan long term, just in
ab-
general, like whatever the field.
Absolutely. My like only hesitation has been um I'm so nervous that I'm gonna end up accidentally providing alcohol to minors. Like
Oh, good point. I didn't even think about that. See, this is why you're the pro.
I've been so scared of it, but I've heard of so many other hosts that have been providing it. It's not like an issue most of the time. Guests are over 21. You can set that as a specific setting for your listing. So if I'm really scared of it, I could do that. But
You can do it
I
with a
mean,
box of chocolate. That'd be a little safer. Box of chocolate, then,
yeah,
a heart shaped box of chocolate.
yes, yeah,
Um,
from the
okay,
brand.
so you clearly like obviously you have a lot of experience. You're getting your systems down. Something I want to talk about is with it being this trendy, I see a lot of people trying to jump in who just don't know what they're doing. And I think that's risky. I think there will be people who experience pain at some point
Yeah.
because of Airbnb, or VRBO, not just, I don't want to single out Airbnb, but short-term rental. And so where do you see right now, where do you see the opportunity, and like what style or do you think is oversaturated?
Um, yeah, the style that I think is oversaturated is the one beds, studios, things like that. Like then you're competing with hotels. And for so long, at least in Fort Wayne, a lot of us came up focusing on the travel nurses when we had that big boom and there was like way more nurses than we had rooms available and stuff like that. So everyone was trying to find properties and put them up for these travel nurses. And those are the size properties that they needed, really. They just needed something that was a one bed or a studio, pet friendly maybe, and that was good to go. But now that kind of market is really slowed down. So now we're focusing on buy the night rentals again. So then we're competing with other hotels and stuff like that. And so like I started to notice that, especially with my cleaning fee, like it was getting ridiculous to even profit and stuff like that and still be competitive and stuff like that. So if you can find something that's bigger, then you can charge big girl prices because you got 6 people staying there or something like that. And then a hotel is not an alternative for them because they're not going to fit 6 people in a hotel room anyways. And most of the time then they're a family and they have pets and they want to have a yard and they want to have a kitchen and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine who actually got me into Airbnb, and he was talking to another investor here. And again, this was a while ago, but she was saying she had like huge houses and like where she could have like 15, 16 people. And she was like, she was killing because I mean, how many people or how many houses can sleep like 12, 15 people? You know what I mean? So
I also really feel for these new hosts that like they are not allowed the same grace that I was given when I was making these mistakes. Like, yeah, I started out, I didn't know what I was doing, and yet I was able to figure it out. And the mistakes that I made along the way were not detrimental because there was still like grace in the market for these things. Like there wasn't a lot of alternatives for people. But now there's a million other opportunities for these guests to stay at, and hotels, and we're not all on lockdown and stuff like that anymore. And so like it does make me sad that for the longest time I thought like, oh, I get to live this great life like because of Airbnb. Like everyone should be an Airbnb host. Like everyone should get to live this life. And I really sincerely hope that people can still find a life where they don't have to like ask their boss for permission to go be a decent husband or wife or mom or dad or whatever, all the things. But it does not, it does take a very special person now in order to be good at all those things and learn fast and adapt and keep your temper down when your guests are being a little crazy and stuff like that.
oh yeah, we're gonna get to that.
I love
So what's a common mistake you see as people are jumping in? What's something that I know you talked about response rates. Is there anything else where you're like, this is so easy to fix if you would just do this, and there people are overlooking it or not wanting to spend the money or time?
Let's see here. Oh, photos. Yeah. Honestly, still some people are like, oh, we can just take iPhone photos. And yes, your iPhone photos are like way better than they used to be way back when. But shameless plug for Dustin McKibben. He's killer at doing our photos and stuff like that. Like the way that he like we had one property that had so many like light bulbs out on the exterior, and like somehow he made all the lights on the inside still look good from the outside, and like the way that he edited it was so great and just looks really enticing and warm, and the openness of them. And like I'd never want to mislead our guests. I don't want to take a picture and leave something out, but I do be in its best light, literally and figuratively. And so what I also appreciate is that he'll also do videos for us. So you can't put those up on Airbnb, but then as soon as someone books, I'll send them our video tour of the property, just like, hey, this, you know exactly what you're getting into. You know exactly what you're booking. They have like 24 hours to cancel if someone doesn't want to anymore. And so I'm like, look, be very aware, you know what you're getting. Not that we're trying to corner them or anything, but just like show it in its best light. And like, yeah, I have a few properties that the owners like just refuse to get professional photos done, and they're the ones that are vacant a lot of times.
Yep, I get it. I mean, I use Dustin for all my listings, and we do the work. So it's like we do listing photos, drone photos, Matterport tour, floor plan, and this is less commitment. You're just going for a showing, but I want people before they enter someone's private residence, or in your case, going for an out of town stay. It's like you gotta let these people know what they're doing, because this is a risk for them. I think hosts forget that like they could have a sure thing at the Marriott. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know exactly what you're getting there, but like they're gambling on you for either a unique experience or a discount on price or whatever the reason that they wanted to do it. And you have to you have to acknowledge that risk and try to offset it with better photos.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All inclusive. And like take an exterior photo too, so they know the neighborhood and stuff like that.
Yep, I used to do that too. And then like our parking was in back. We were over by Lakeside Park on the north side of town in the 05. And we put like a little monogram in back. And then I took a picture of that because I knew they were going to be coming down an alley. And alleys are kind of sketch. So like I wanted to like them to feel very comfortable. Like, hey, that's that M that I saw in the picture. I'm in the right spot in case it's like the middle of the night, or God knows when they're getting there and they're not familiar with the area. So like I think anything that you can do to ease anxieties, I think that's like a no-brainer to me. Especially photos, like you can use them for until you change the property. If you never do, you can use the same photos for
sell your house if you want to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So okay. And then how do you know how to price your listings? Like how do you figure that out?
Yeah, that was a lot easier when it was during COVID times and we were doing more like monthly rates. Now that we've done nightly rates and stuff like that, I'll just go and find comparable properties on Airbnb. So I'll go back to like the traveling side. I'll look up, find a property that's not even just a comparable in size, but like general location, same amenities, same quality too. Like it's, if they were both renovated, I want to make sure that we got stainless steel appliances, we both got central air, good parking, if it has a backyard, we both have a backyard and stuff like that. Find out what their pricing and stuff like that is. Look at what their cleaning fee is. That was the part that was killing me for a while, was like, my cleaner charges me $100 for a cleaning fee. And that was normal during when we had these like monthly stays and stuff like that. But for, I was like, man, they were there for like 8 hours. How bad could it be? And I was like, I don't want to undercut our cleaners, because they are the ones that really do the bulk of our work at our property now. Like, they are the ones that should, of anyone to cut, like they would not be the people to cut. And so I started asking what other people were doing and stuff like that. And so we ended up switching from flat rate to hourly rate for those short stays. So 1 to 2 to 3 night stays, we do an hourly rate. If it's anything over that, then they get their flat rate and stuff like that. And just talking with our cleaner about it, being like, hey, just like kind of an open communication of like, hey, I don't want to undercut you. And yet, if I keep paying your fees, we're going to be out of business, which means that you're not going to have properties to clean anymore. So like, let's find a good win-win situation.
Yeah, that's, you know what, I didn't even have that in my notes, but the cleaner is so important. So I was living in Orlando, had my Airbnb here, and I was very generous with my cleaner. Not that I overpaid her, but like, if I needed her to, like, people broke blinds all the time. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? How are you breaking all these blinds? But I would always pay her to go to Home Depot. I would pay her to do anything extra if I needed like an emergency lawn cut because my guy couldn't get there. Something like that, where I see what I used to see from even other hosts that also used her was like, they were trying to get as much as they possibly could squeeze out of her for as little as possible. And it's like, they're not making that much money to begin with. So it's not like, you know what I mean? Like you're kind of squeezing someone who has low margins anyways. And I think you need to keep that in mind. Like, they're not rolling out in their Mercedes and getting in their yacht. Like that, these are cleaners who are like trying to make ends meet a lot of times. And, they're blue collar people. And it's like, as much as economically, it has to make sense, or else you go out of business. But it's like, I think it's a really important thing you touched on about like taking care of your cleaners, taking care of the people who are your eyes and ears, because the second that they start to either not trust you or say, is this even worth it? Then you're going to start having major problems.
Yes. Yeah. Sincerely. So I've gone through just using, like, when I would take on properties too, to take on their cleaners and stuff like that. And just like, I had one that was like, oh yeah, we can't come today. And it's like, what? What do you mean you can't come today? So I'm so grateful. And just especially to realize like they are paying for their supplies, their cleaning materials and stuff like that. So it's not like they're balling out, and like they are the heart and soul of your company. So I'm so grateful. The current one that I have, Dalton, with Custom Cleans, he's fantastic. He was messaging me on Facebook, and at the time I had a first, second, third string cleaner. I was good to go. I didn't need anybody. And a lot of people started to message me about if I needed cleans, and I was like, no, I'm good right now. Thank you so much. And he really kept adamantly hitting me up about it. And I was like, bruh, I'm good. I'm so good. Thank you very much. But I am good right now. But one day, my cleaner was busy or something. And we got hit with an emergency. And I was like, he happened to message me that day. And I was like, yeah, actually, I really could use you. And now he's my first string cleaner for everything. He's never told me no. He jumps when we need him to jump, like when we have, trying different schedulers and stuff like that for, we have 48 properties, and like they're not all in the same area. And so making sure like, hey, these properties go to this notification for this cleaner, and these go there and stuff like that. And so the hiccups that come along with the way with that, when I mess up or like the program messes up or whatever, like he hasn't been like, that's a you problem. He still goes out and does it.
No, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's honestly one of the most important things that I completely overlooked is having that infrastructure. So, okay, now the fun stuff. I want to talk about crazy story time. I've got a few, but I think these are important. Not only are they going to be like either fun or funny, but now they're funny. It wasn't funny when it happened, but I want people to hear this stuff, because I think people are getting lured in by the returns. And yes, the returns are way better than, a year-long lease. They for sure are, but it comes with inherent risk, and there can be some major stuff that goes wrong. So like, do you have like a story or two that stands out as something like crazy that you had to deal with that was like super stressful?
Yeah. Yep. It was right when I had moved out of Fort Wayne to Phoenix, and I was really getting used to delegating and like, hey, it is my job to coordinate everything, and it's not my job to physically do everything because obviously I'm how many states away now. And I woke up one morning and a guest had messaged me that he sent me pictures of these bug bites on him, and I was like, what the hell is that? And he's like, I think you have bed bugs. And I was like, that's death to an Airbnb. Like, don't say that. And it was an apartment within a bigger building. So it's not like just self-contained. Like that could, and it was a brand new listing. And so I was like, if this gets out and it goes to the whole house, like we're done. Like we're actually going to have to be done. Like I'd have to take the listing off, wait like a month and maybe post it again. I don't know. And, so I sent Orkin over there immediately, and what do you know? It's not that the bed has bed bugs because I was smart enough to get mattress protectors on it, but the guest's personal pillow that he brought in is infested with these nasty little suckers.
Oh my gosh.
The guest was like, so they sent like a whole report back on it and stuff like that, and the guest was like, oh no, it's just mold. It's just been sitting in my truck for a while. Like, well, first of all, why is that what you're sleeping on at night? First of all, I don't know about that. And second of all, mold does not do that to your skin. So something ain't adding up. And we got it all taken care of. It was like $2,800 and it was all self-contained and we got it taken care of. And by the grace of God, like it didn't spread or anything like that. But then when it was time to backbill the guest for it, obviously he didn't want to pay for it. It refused to, even though in our like Airbnb message thread, like he owned up to that. Yes, that is my pillow. Yes, I see the report saying that pillow is the problem. No, I don't believe it's that. And then all the things, but like he owned up to it. And we have a report from Orkin who happened, like if anyone can tell the difference between mold and bed bugs, I'm pretty sure it's Orkin. And, so then I escalated it to air cover, and what do you know? That part's not covered in air cover because they say that it's not actual damage to the property. Meanwhile, if I would have let it go, then it would have been damage to the actual property. But so that happened on a Wednesday, and like while I'm like panicking, just like, what are we gonna do? Should I go back to Indiana? I don't know what to do. Not the answer. I was trying to calm myself down and just being like, look. There's going to be something else that comes along next week that you're going to be freaking out. Like, this is just this week's emergency. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. It's going to be better next week. It's going to be fine. It came early. The next emergency came early. On Sunday, we had a crackhead break into one of the other apartments and just like take his clothes off, take everything else off the walls, scream, make up some songs and stuff like that. And I was like... I think this is an omen to like go back home. I think it took everything in me not to go back, but like, what do? You call, I'm not going to take him out of the property. You call the cops, they come and pick him up. You give him a nice complimentary blanket to wrap himself up in so he's not indecent and send him on his way. We got it cleaned up. Everything was fine. But I was like, okay, I think I earned all the stripes that week.
Yeah. Oh man, that's ridiculous. I've got a couple about not lowering your price. So I learned my lesson about what happens when you lower your price too low. I got two of those. So one was, I lowered my price. Like we had a gap and I was like, I'm just going to lower it and get like even though it was cheap, I'm like, you know what, whatever. They pay the cleaning fee. I'd rather have, that $60 for the day instead of nothing.
Yes. Yep.
Bad idea. So what we found out was basically there's like Facebook groups that find cheap Airbnbs and then they throw parties. And these are like, I don't want to be too graphic. They were yucky. I actually told my cleaner, just throw away all the sheets, like get rid of everything. Yeah. And, she was like horrified. And I was like, just throw everything away. I'm like, we'll buy all new. Cause I had a whole bunch of sheets anyways. I'm like, just chuck them all. So that was like lesson one. And he totally denied everything. He was like, what are you talking about? Like, we were just sleeping. I'm like, you completely destroyed the house. Like the neighbors told me you partied. And then another one, actually right after I sold it, I felt horrible. It was the new owner and I sold it to this guy. I met him on Facebook. So I'd kind of befriended him and I was like, hey, I've got an off market deal. Or actually, I think I had it listed, but I was like, hey, here you go. He was from out of town. I told him, I was like, don't lower your prices. Like, that's when the bad things happen. I mean, not to say like don't figure out where the line is, but don't go so low that you open the door to someone who's like, hey, for $50 we can just trash a house. And he lowered it and got someone from out of town who was like a wanted criminal, and the feds kicked in the door and like they pulled up and like parked on the lawn. So they trashed the lawn and then kicked in the front door and arrested these guys. And this was like his like second week as the owner. I felt terrible. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I went in the, what do you call it, next door app to read, and everybody was giving their accounts of what happened. And some people thought it was gunshots, other people thought it was like flashbang grenades. It was like a whole thing. So it's like, I learned my lesson, and I guess he did too. Is like, it's better to have a vacancy than go so low that you open the door for like a massive problem.
Yeah. I definitely, when I first started doing it out of my house, I was like, who really want, like, my apartment was not that nice. And so I was like, I don't know who's really gonna want to stay in this place anyways, and who comes to Fort Wayne and all these things. And so I was like, I'll just be the cheapest then. Strongly would not recommend, especially when you're living with them. And so as I was able to bump my price up, I was like, these problems start to go away. It's really strange that people that get such great deals, they'll still try to nickel and dime you for things. And honestly, maybe I just haven't hit that high of a level yet, but I have not seen that even at a really high luxury level. Like, there's an expectation of quality, but they're not really nickel and diming you for things. Like one of my most expensive listings, the guy's daughter had a bloody nose on the pillows and stuff like that. So we had to buy new sheets, and he was like, oh yeah, here's extra for that. Like, so sorry, stuff like that. So like they don't, it doesn't hurt them as much.
Yeah, I see that in my business too, where it's like the people who beat me up the hardest over commission are often, not always, but often the hardest people to deal with, where people who are like, I'm willing to pay for quality, just deliver on what you promised, and we're all good. That happened. I'm trying to think of some other ones I had. I had a move in, move out, same day move in, move out. The girl had taken down she gave me a bad review. My only 2 bad reviews were from people who like wrecked the place. She took down all the smoke detectors and smoked in it. It was dead of winter. It was like January. So she left all the windows open. So my cleaner gets there. I'm like, God knows what my gas bill is going to be. And it smelled like smoke. And I had an infant moving in or checking in. It was a young couple with an infant. So I was freaking out because I'm like, oh no. And so she basically, my cleaner is so amazing. Her name's Ashley. She scrubbed down all the walls. She went and bought, I don't know what it wasn't Ozium, but it was some like chemical or commercial grade
Bioplex D out of Fort Wayne Janitorial Supply. I don't know what it is. It is not sold everywhere else. It is literally a Fort Wayne only thing. Buy it out of House and Home. That's what's going to save you.
Yeah, that might have been. I don't even remember at this point, but she bought something. It might have been it, and she sprayed the place down because I was on the fence of like, should I tell them? Like, I don't want them walking into a problem. That would be wrong. But she left, so she scrubbed. She like literally wiped all the walls, like sprayed all this stuff, cleaned it, everything. And I was like, you know what? And she left and came back right before their check-in. It was like, I don't smell anything. And I'm like, all right, let's see how it goes. I'm like, I'm gonna roll the dice. And I don't want to tell them and put it in their head and then have them like freaking out. I was like, if they say something, I'll pay for their hotel. I'll just put them in a hotel and like not worry about it. And they didn't say a word. They gave us a 5-star. Like, they were super happy and all was well. But there was that like 5-hour panic window,
Just like sweating. Like, I'll be in like wherever I'm at as those things are happening, and like there's obviously day-to-day things that are still happening, and I'm just like, I'm here, but my brain is over here, like dealing with this problem. Like, I don't even know what's happening in front of me. But it's been the hardest thing for me. I finally won a case recently, but proving smoking cases to air cover was like, they're like, what's your proof? I was like, how do you take a photo of a smell? How do you take a photo of that?
This is my proof right here.
Yeah, especially if they were really, like, some of them are really smart, because like one person even put the smoke detectors back. Like, they didn't have anything in I dug through the trash to find anything for it, and I still couldn't find it. I couldn't find anything on the cameras of them like coming outside with something in their mouth still. Like, I couldn't find anything. It was rough.
Yeah, I had another thing, and I feel like Airbnb, I don't know if they still do this. Do they still kind of skew more towards the traveler? I feel like they kind of like, if they have to
Yeah,
pick a side, they're going to lean more towards traveler because I think their theory is like, we can find more hosts, but if the travelers stop traveling, then we're going to have a serious problem.
yeah.
I had one guy, he called me, he called me like four, or it was actually my wife. We had my wife's number on there, called four times in the middle of the night. She finally answered because we're like, is this a real emergency? He couldn't figure out the volume on the remote because it was on the side of the remote and not like in the normal spot. And then he gave me a 3 review or a 3 star, and he gave me a 3 in cleanliness because the floors sloped and he couldn't find the Kroger nearby. That was his logic. I can't, and he said this is a house for millennials because the remote didn't work. It didn't have local news. And so I'm like, how am I
That
getting a
is
3?
your problem.
Yeah, right, right. Isn't that so obvious? And Airbnb was like, sorry. They were just like,
Yeah.
that's how it is. And it was early on too. So I'm like trying to get super hosts, and I'm like,
Yep.
this is where, I was telling you, like, I did not have the temperament for Airbnb. If I had met you back then, I would have for sure had you manage it because I would get so mad at stuff like that. Cause like we worked so hard. We put good furniture. We bought a house that had been flipped. Like we thought of, at least I tried to think of like every little thing, just little stuff, little utensils and soaps and
Yeah.
anything someone could possibly need. I wanted this to be hands down the best option in the city. And then to have somebody, do that because of the floors. So I'm like, well, the house was built in like 1875. Like, yeah, the floors might slope a little bit,
We had one guest that put it in her review that she's like, oh, the floors are uneven. And so it like my back, like I just could hardly even get up the next day. Like the little like the no, but whatever. Okay. And then another time we had this lady moved in her mom. So it was under her name. She moved in her mom. She lived there for 4 days. Then the actual lady came to like check up on her. And she thought that we had mold, that we had this and all these things. And so she took photos, blew us up on Airbnb. We finally we were within our rights because they're like, no, these things need to be reported within like the first 24 hours. So she's way out of line on this. And so then I also like was pointing out in the photos, like, this is actually not mold. Like we just had this shower redone, like the green that she's talking about on the front porch. Like that's just wet wood. It's the color of it, what it is. Like, I don't know what you want. And so we were able to prove to them. And so we didn't get penalized for her canceling or anything like that, but they still allowed her review. And so like I fought for like a month and a half on that thing. And they're like, well, to the photos. And I was like, okay, let's look through the photos together. And I was like, what do you see there? And they're like, well, not much actually. And I was like, yes, exactly. But still it posted. And then last complaint here real quick is that, yeah, I'm really proud of my check-in instructions. Like I've spent a lot of work on them, and when they scheduled out to go, all the information that I have included, I have lots of YouTube links for tutorials and stuff like that. So not only like, hey, this is what you're looking for on where to find your door. This is how to use the lock. This is how, like, all these YouTube tutorials. And I had one guest that like was checking in at like 1 a.m. and calling me and is like, are you going to send the check-in instructions? And I was like, bro, I did like 3 weeks ago when you booked this thing. And he's like, well, how do you get in? And I was like, it's in the instructions that I sent. And they're like, well, how do you use the lock? And I'm like, is in the instructions.
Read the damn instructions.
Yes. And they're like, oh, we didn't download the Airbnb app. And I was like, that's kind of crucial actually. So I don't know, but
yeah. So I've got more of these stories, but I think for the sake of time, we'll sit on some of them. But I just want people to know, like, you will have to deal with frustrations, or you will have to pay someone to deal with frustrations. Like, you're with people, and no matter what your circle looks like in life, like when you're travelers, like it's all walks of life, it's all types of people, it's all types of, whatever experiences, who knows what they're going through in their life. And like, I feel like you just got to be prepared to deal with it, or don't do it. There's no, like, they're right. Even when they're wrong, they're still kind of right because they have the leverage.
Yeah. And you got to watch your tone and like the way that you say things. You have to be like happy to help them with whatever stupid problem they have. I watched a video the other day about some like co-host calling her property owner and being like, the guests say that the birds are too loud. Like, what do you want me to do about it? Do you want me to run through the forest? And like everyone was laughing about how like, yeah, that's what you have to do. So it's stupid that they're like, that's a them problem that like, okay, if you just take extreme ownership, that's what you have to do sometimes. Like, yes, that's a you problem, but you're going to make it my problem. So like, okay, here I go running through the forest to scare all the birds away. You have to do.
Yep. Okay, so just wrapping up a little bit. This is the Fort Wayne Local Podcast. So when you lived here, what was your favorite thing about living in Fort Wayne?
I really loved the opportunity that was there. Like, I love that people are still good Midwestern people. I love all the development that's coming into the city. Like, there's a lot of opportunity. Yes, there's a lot of Airbnbs in there, and maybe that's. I mean, it's the avenue that I took. I really enjoy it. I'm not saying that there still is an opportunity, but like. For Airbnbs, but like, man, Fort Wayne really is growing and stuff like that. And so whether you've lived there your whole life, whether you're just moving there, whether you're thinking about doing business there, like there is a lot of opportunity in Fort Wayne. And so I really love the city. I think the people there really care about building it to be the best that it could be.
I like that. That's a new answer. People always reference the people, but I don't think people have ever said the opportunity. And I completely agree. I mean, I was in Florida for 12 years. Came back in 2019, and like I feel like I just see opportunity everywhere. My biggest stress is like trying to figure out how to take advantage of all of it because I see something I want to do everywhere.
Yes. There's a lot of room yet for everyone. And just like, man, the developments that they've been building and stuff like that, like those are beautiful. This is just the tip of the iceberg still for Fort Wayne.
Oh, I agree. All right, Jacinta, that was awesome. There's a lot of gems in there, a lot of nuggets. I know some of the little bit of experience. I know you know what you're talking about. So I hope if anyone's thinking about getting in, watch this, listen to it, take notes, follow up with you. So how can people connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome to message me directly, 260-600-0086. A lot of zeros in there. Or you can find me on Instagram at the Airbnb Queen. Facebook is my name, Jacinta Newstell. So I really enjoy it. You can feel free to like watch all my videos, get a feel for who I am. I've really started to realize that like I want to be with like-minded people and stuff like that. So I feel like if you get to know my social media or whatever, you're going to find out that we think a lot alike. And sometimes I know my stuff. So if I can use it to your advantage, that'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jacinta.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.